Good day, everyone. Today I will present my topic entitled Foresight and Futures Thinking as a Framework for Community-Based Educational Transformation, a Research and Development Perspective. We are living in a time of rapid change. Artificial intelligence, uncertainty, technological disruption, and even shifting social realities. Because of this, education can no longer rely on traditional planning alone. We need more forward-looking, more inclusive, and more transformative. This is where foresight and futures thinking come in. Abstract. Foresight in this study is not forecasting. It is a reflective and strategic process for examining possible and preferred futures. Drawing on Beck and Bauman's theory of uncertainty, Foucault's analysis of knowledge and power, and Drucker's strategic leadership principles, along with major foresight scholars. This paper argues that education must move beyond short-term reactive reforms toward long-term systemic transformation. Aligned with UNESCO's Futures Literacy Initiatives and recent research from 2024 to 2026, I propose a community-based participatory framework that cultivates anticipatory competence among educational leaders. The 21st century is marked by technological disruption, climate instability, demographic shifts, and widening inequality. Traditional educational planning remains largely linear and reactive, which is insufficient for such volatility. Futures thinking differs from prediction. It explores multiple possibilities, best case, worst case, and transformative futures. This discussion propose a research initiative titled Building Futures Ready Communities, which integrates futures literacy into local educational governance. The goal is to shift educational leadership from crisis management to proactive transformation. What are the sociological foundations? The urgency for futures thinking is rooted in sociological transformation. Beck's concept of the rich society explains how modern institutions generate manufactured uncertainties. Bauman's liquid modernity highlights instability in institutions, identities, and professions. Schools, originally designed for industrial stability, now operate in fluid environments. Futures thinking strengthens anticipatory capacity, enabling institutions to engage uncertainty constructively rather than defensively. Knowledge, power, and educational discourse. Foucault reminds us that knowledge systems are historically constructed and shaped by power relations. Curriculum is never neutral. It reflects dominant assumptions about what counts as legitimate knowledge. Futures thinking challenges these discursive limits. It transforms learners from passive recipients into co-creators of alternative futures. Aligned with the idea of structural transformation in peace theory, futures literacy becomes emancipatory when communities critically examine whose future is being imagined and whose voices are excluded. Thus, foresight is both ethical and political. Management and strategic foresight. From a management perspective, Drucker warned that acting with yesterday's logic during times of turbulence is the greatest risk. Strategic foresight addresses this. Scenario planning encourages preparation for multiple plausible futures. The foresight principle frames long-term thinking as both moral and strategic necessity. Futures literacy, as conceptualized in contemporary scholarship, strengthens the capacity to use the future to innovate or innovate the present. These frameworks inform the proposed research architecture for educational planning. Contemporary research in the year 2024 to 2026. Recent studies demonstrate growing global integration of futures thinking in education. Research in 2025 shows that futures-oriented pedagogy enhances innovative teaching aligned with Education 5.0. A 2024 textbook analysis in Japan reveals emerging futures content. Additional 2024 research identifies best practices for integrating futures thinking in primary education. Globally, UNESCO institutionalized anticipatory governance through its Futures Literacy and Futures of Education initiatives. The direction is clear. Anticipatory competence is becoming foundational in educational reform. Because my discussion is about foresight and futures thinking as a framework for community-based educational transformation, research and development perspective, I've included a proposed community development research entitled Building Futures-Ready Communities, a participatory futures literacy initiative for local educational planning. The purpose of this study is to investigate how integrating futures literacy workshops into community-based planning enhances strategic responsiveness and inclusive decision-making. The research questions are as follows. How does futures literacy influence perceptions of uncertainty? What impact does participatory scenario building have on planning outcomes? Can foresight practices increase community resilience and adaptability? The design of this study is mixed method. Community-based participatory research. Participants include school leaders, teachers, parents, students, and policy makers. The phases of implementations are as follows. First, baseline assessment. Survey stakeholder perceptions of future challenges. Futures literacy workshops. There will be trend analysis, scenario development, best case, worst case, transformative futures, backcasting from preferred futures. Strategic action planning. Translate insights into policy recommendations and school improvement plans. And the last will be evaluation, qualitative interviews and quantitative perception scales. This study is anchored in these theoretical frameworks. This initiative integrates futures literacy and anticipatory systems thinking, community-based participatory research, and resilience and adaptive governance theory. Educational communities are conceptualized as proactive adaptive systems capable of shaping sustainable developmental trajectories. The expected outcomes are as follows. Enhanced anticipatory competence, more inclusive planning process, policies aligned with long-term community aspirations, and reduced reactive decision-making. Foresight shifts governance from crisis response to strategic preparedness. Considerations. However, three risks must be acknowledged. Over-speculation without practical grounding. Reinforcement of dominant power narratives if participation is limited, and the last, institutional resistance to implementation. When grounded in participatory ethics and structured methodology, futures thinking remains emancipatory rather than exclusive. An application in context of global mobility, climate anxiety, and AI integration, futures thinking enables leaders to move beyond crisis management. It supports the design of flexible learning ecosystems and cultivate adaptive collaborative student mindsets. For policymakers, foresight extends planning beyond electoral cycles. For teachers, it encourages interdisciplinary collaboration. For local governance in the Philippines, community-based foresight ensures transformation is locally grounded rather than extremely imposed. Yes, foresight and futures thinking are not about predicting the future. They are about expanding our collective capacity to imagine and design better futures to each community. A world full of uncertainty. Anticipatory competence may be the most significant leadership skill. Education must move from reactive adaptation to more proactive transformation. As what Mr. Peter Drucker have said, The best way to predict the future is to create it.